Hi there, Angela Kaufman coming back to you with another video, and I'm joined by my buddies here, Muggsy and Spango, and it just occurred to me we're like the Stripe family. I didn't realize we were all going to be stripey today. But anyway, so this is another video in this series for your pathway to publishing. We started last time looking at what to do with that brilliant idea that you first have that you want to grow into a story. So maybe you've taken some time to experiment and explore whether you are a plotter or a pantser. And if you haven't, be sure to check out that video and learn more about what that all means. So in this video, we're going to look a little bit more at kind of following up with that idea and exploring how do you find the time to write. That's one of the biggest obstacles. One, I think, is anxiety, right? When you're feeling intimidated and overwhelmed, like, oh my God, how am I going to turn this into a, double-digit 1,000-word novel when it's just this idea that I have floating around in my head? And there's that anxiety, like, can I really write a book? Am I really an author? I didn't go to school for English. I didn't go to school for writing. So that's one big obstacle. But another big obstacle is finding the time to write. And it's not easy. Some people will say, well, we all have the same hours in a day, but the reality is some of us have greater demands on our time and energy. Some of us have differing abilities so that our bandwidth to commit to something like writing might be limited. And that's the case for me. So I'm a person who has a mild TBI from a car accident from many years ago. And so even though I can accommodate it quite a bit, still, when it comes to writing, especially fiction writing, like I find that there's a different mindset, because I write articles and nonfiction things for a living. I can do that more fluidly. I can do that very easily, even when I'm tired. In fact, I can write when I have like certain levels of migraine at this point. I've just learned how to close my eyes and find the keys and fix the mistakes later. But when it comes to fiction writing, I can't do that in that headspace. I really do need to be in a different headspace. And for some people, it might be the opposite. For some people, it might be fiction comes easier, but, reality-based stuff requires more of a different kind of attention and technical skill. And so maybe for some folks, that requires more of a fresh focus and clear mind and alert mind. So get to know what your cycles of energy are like. Get to know what's best for you. When are the times of day that your imagination is flowing more? What are the types of things that stand in the way of just your energy? Like, not even talking about the other distractions, but let's just talk about your energy. So for me, when it comes to fiction, it's either got to be like first thing in the morning, or it has to be a day that I'm not doing other heavy duty work. Like, and by that I mean like mentally heavy duty work. Because if I'm exhausted from typing up content for my clients, my creativity, my ability to like really, I mean, I've read some stuff that I've written just as a first draft when I was exhausted. And I'm like, holy cow, what were you thinking? Because really, just the energy isn't there. Now, maybe you've noticed that after you go to the gym, you're more alert and energetic, and that's the best time for you to write. Maybe you need to write before you leave the house, because once you leave the house, you're just not going to do it. Maybe you need to set aside a day and just bang out a bunch of scenes. Maybe you need to write a little bit every day. And I would say experiment, because you might say to yourself, I know I'm the kind of person who needs to blah, blah, blah. I need to do it this way, to do it that way. Try it. And then try the other way just to experiment, just to test yourself. And the reason I say that is, I normally would have considered myself someone who needs to write a little bit every day. And I've done that for periods of time, and it works at times. And then there's times when it doesn't work. So as your schedule changes, as the demands on your life might change, your writing doesn't have to end. It just means your routine, that routine that you thought was the only way you could go, might not be your only option. So several years ago, I want to say maybe it was 2018, I joined a boot camp that a friend of mine was running, Linda Lowen, who I will mention a lot. Check out her website, alwayswantedtowrite.com. She was offering a really great boot camp, and it was called like, I don't remember what it's called. But the gist of it was, we were writing X number of words a day for 150 days. And that went in with the title. So the fact that I don't remember the details is also why I don't remember the title of the boot camp. But there were groups of us that committed to writing X number of words a day for a certain span of time. And it didn't have to be related to a novel or a short story. It could just be, the idea was you sit down and you commit to writing on a schedule. And that's a strategy that a lot of successful folks use. Like Stephen King talks about, he sits down and he writes X number of words every day. And keep in mind, he's rich and famous now, but when he first started off, he and his wife were broke. First of all, he started off as a child, writing, very prolific writer as a child, and submitting to I think they were like sci-fi and horror magazines. And his mom would pay him a little bit, even though she was a single mom, didn't have a lot of money, and she would pay him a little bit to just keep writing. So his thing is very much just keep doing it, just keep writing. The more you do it, the better you're going to get. You don't have to have an agenda, just do it. And the only way you're going to do that is to set aside some time and say, my target is this many words. I'm going to do at least this many words. So that had some great aspects to it. It definitely got me into a routine of making writing a priority. And it definitely got me into a routine of just playing around with short stories. I wrote a lot of things in that time that will never see the light of day. Some of it for good reason. And others just because, I've lost interest in the concept I was working on at the time. But that's okay, because the point of it was make it a priority, sit down, do it. X amount of words, make it a target you can reach. And if you want to keep going, you can keep going. And very often, a lot of times I would keep going beyond the word count because, hey, I'm already kind of in the zone with this. So why stop just because I reached the word target? So the downside to that is not everybody can do that. And I don't mean that in a way of saying like anyone's incapable of it, but we have, we process things in different ways. We think in different ways. Our energy ebbs and flows in different ways. So that may work for some people under certain circumstances, not for other people. Or it might work for some people at certain times in your life, but then things change and maybe that's not going to be your target. That's okay. It's important to important to recognize that and not to cut yourself off from writing just because you got a different job or you're going through a situation with your family and suddenly your needs change. So there's other ways to fit it in. I would rather see somebody schedule 3 days. I'm going to say a week, but a week is a lot. I know a week is a lot. If you can do a week, that's great. So like the end of last year, I was able to, like the last 3 months, I was able to set aside close to a week. It was more like 5 or 6 days. And that was, that time period was my writing took priority. And if I did work for other people, it was going to be secondary. That's not what I typically do. But I was able to do that for a couple of months and give myself this like stretch of time where I didn't have to think about anything else. My mind was fresh. I could just focus on the story I was working on and like a side project. And it was great. It was kind of like a mini writer's retreat at home during COVID where I wasn't going to go anywhere anyway at that point. So taking on that idea, if you can't do 5 days, you can't do a week, can you do 3 days? Can you do 2 days? And again, I'm talking in a month, not like every week. If you can do it every week, that's, 2 or 3 days a week, that's great. Most of us probably can't do that. If you can do it in a month, that time started to become time that I really looked forward to. And that wasn't the only time I was writing. So I was writing, throughout the month, when I had pockets of free time aside from my clients' work. But what would happen was I would start to look forward to that 3 to 5 days like it was a vacation. Like I would start to crave that time to have like, not that it was uninterrupted, but to have like that full focus. Now, again, I was saying not that it's uninterrupted. I still was taking care of the dogs, the guinea pigs, still had stuff going on here, still had stuff I wanted to do with my partner. So it wasn't like that's all I was doing was, oh my God, what a great thing if we could like lock ourselves in a cabin for a week or a month or something and just write, like that would be amazing. And I would love that, but that is a luxury that has not happened yet. So if you're able to say, during this week, the first 4 hours of the day, during this 3-day period, the first 4 hours of the day, modify it to what will work for you. Don't feel discouraged if you have kids, if you have 2 jobs, if you have things going on, because people have things going on. Don't let that discourage you. Make some kind of commitment to yourself. Look at your calendar and say, okay, maybe it's going to be one day out of the whole month. And I've known I've known people who do that. I know someone who, this person writes in their own time throughout the month, but periodically, at least before COVID, they would schedule themselves to go get an Airbnb somewhere for a weekend and just concentrate on a certain project and nothing else. And it worked for them. So if you're going to be like a binge writer like that, schedule it in, and try different things. Try giving yourself a writing vacation, see if it works. And then even if it does work, try doing a stretch of time where you commit to X number of words each day. See how that works for you. And even if that's working fine, experiment with, a couple different systems, because I guarantee as your life is changing, as your routines are changing, the way that you accommodate your need to write and to stay on top of a project is also going to change. And one last thing I'll say, don't feel discouraged if you have a project that you're passionate about and you've had to step away from it for a little while. That can be a blessing in disguise. It can be very beneficial to look at a piece with fresh eyes after months or even years have gone by. So don't disregard a project just because you have to reread a couple pages or a couple chapters to get back in the zone of where you were. So in the other video, I talked about the clothesline method as a way that pantsers, people who fly by the seat of our pants, will sometimes write. And one of the good things about doing that is if you've gotten out of your zone, like let's say you've been away from your project for a little while and you've kind of gotten out of the inspiration, one way to get back into it is to, first of all, reconnect with what inspired you to work on that project in the first place. And that might be something that has nothing to do with writing. Reconnect with the reason you're working on this book. And then once you've done that, consider dabbling a little bit with the clothesline method. And what I mean by that is just come up with a scene, or a character study or something. Don't worry about fitting it in perfectly with what you left off with. Just pick up somewhere. Just start somewhere. Write a scene. Write a couple of scenes. Write a conversation with your character. Write a description of your character. Do something that bridges that world back to the world you left off with, and you may come back to it with brand new eyes. And that's fine. In fact, that might be very beneficial. So you may come back to it with new eyes. You may come back to it with new ideas. That's great. It's bringing you back to your story in a place maybe of some greater maturity and greater insight from where you left off. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. And you can always reach me by email at angelaKaufmanauthor@gmail.com. And if you have questions or suggestions for future videos, I always love to hear from you. Thanks and have a great day.